Welcome back to the Overthinking Podcast, the show where we take the fitness chaos you're probably rushing through and slow it down long enough to actually make sense of it.
And we're your hosts, Kelsey and Bree. And around here, we believe that results don't come from just doing more, they come from doing things better, aka with intention. Everyone wants to lift heavier, sweat more, move faster because it feels productive. But what if the reason your progress has stalled isn't because you're not doing enough? It might be because you're doing everything too fast and too fast to build anything.
Today, we're talking about something that sounds really simple, but it might be the biggest shift your training needs. We're talking tempo, or in normal human language, learning how to slow down your reps so you can feel the burn instead of just moving weight from point A to point B. There's a big difference between dropping into a squat and hoping for the best versus lowering with intention, owning that bottom position and driving out with purpose.
This is literally one of the number one things I cue my clients on when it comes to form review videos is like, why are you rushing through the back part of that rep? Like, think about like a dumbbell row, right? If I'm just like rowing like a chainsaw, like I'm not thinking about what my biceps, my lats, my rhomboids, my traps, like I'm just boom, 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 making the thing happen. And I think what people miss out on is like that ability to really squeeze the rep. And we'll get into this more, but I wanted to just highlight that the reason why I'm extra passionate about this topic is because it is one of those things that I was like, I wish I had a podcast to just send my client to tell them why I'm always talking about tempo. So
For
this is that
once,
podcast.
for once, Bree is hopping up on the soapbox
Yeah. This
instead
is
of
my
me.
for sure. This is my I would say Roman Empire number 2 or 3. Not number
Okay.
1, but it's up there.
Okay.
Okay.
But
But
first,
first we are going to do a little influence de-influence this week because we actually have a similar, if not the same, influence this week.
we're both obsessed.
We are ungodly obsessed with Lululemon's new trousers they came out with. And this is not sponsored. We don't have sponsors. And we've tried all of the athleisure. When it comes to these trousers, I wore them. I packed an entire 50-pound suitcase to San Diego this weekend and I wore these trousers 3 times.
Yeah. They are like secret pajamas. Like my entire goal of streetwear is to be comfortable. Actually, at any point, I want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
When I have to wear like heels and a dress, I'm just like counting down the minutes until I can be comfortable again. But I mean, like, who doesn't want streetwear that looks dressed up but is secret pajamas?
Yes.
This is what these Lululemon trousers are. I should look
And
up.
they even have belt loops. Like, you can really dress them up. Like, I think I have so I have the athletic trousers from, like, I don't know, a couple years ago. Viore trousers, 2 different pairs. Like, they're thicker kind, they're more athletic, like, swishy kind, and then these trousers came out.
Yes.
And I've got black ones because I wear these to work. So I got black ones, the pinstripe ones, and I thought the pinstripe would be too dressy, but I you can wear them anytime, every time.
Yep. I started with the brown, like the dark, dark brown, and then I ended up getting the black pinstripe because I was so obsessed. And they're unmatched. They're the Daydrift high rise wide leg trouser.
Amazing. And the best part is, like, when you wear a trouser and you kinda just are, like, swimming in them, especially wide leg ones,
Mhm.
I feel like they hug the butt just enough, so you get, like, that booty contour, but
Yes.
then it's, like, mystery leg. Like, I
Yes.
don't know, you got sticks under there? What do you got?
And I've always loved a trouser. A lot of my trousers, like, they're high-waisted, but they sit a little too low, so it goes right across where your pooch is,
Yeah.
and it makes you feel like you're, like, spilling over, but these Lulu trousers sit so perfectly at, like, the smallest part of your waist, so it kind of, like, I don't know, it just is so flattering, and it, like you said, makes your butt look good. They don't miss.
I like that the waistband is, like, thick enough where if I tuck my shirt in, it's not just gonna, like, fall out, but it's
Yes.
not so tight where it digs into me.
Yes. And the waistband, I don't know if we mentioned this, is elastic.
Yes, it's elastic, but it doesn't have, like, the ridges where it looks like an athletic jogger.
Yes,
It
yes,
looks
and
like a trouser.
I have an Aloe pair of trousers, but, like, on the back, it has that elastic looking thing, and
Yes.
it makes it look more casual.
I almost felt too dressy in these
Mm,
pants, like,
yeah,
just walking around town with, like, a crop t-shirt on, and I was like,
yeah,
"No, that's
yeah.
it's a sleigh."
I mean,
So
I
both
wore
of us
them to your football game.
You sure did, and
Yeah,
you looked and, like, they're sweat wicking too. That's the thing, like, what you were saying about, like, wanting to be comfortable all the time. I wanna know that if I'm gonna, like, break down and do a couple push-ups, or if I'm gonna be sweaty, especially here in Chicago,
yeah,
that I'm not gonna just be, like, pitting out and crotch sweat and all the things.
yeah, yep.
Alright, so go buy them.
I got to see you play for the first time. That was exciting.
And what did you think? You thought it was pretty physical, huh?
I love how scrappy you are.
Oh, yeah. If you start it, Imma finish it.
Bree is a bad bitch on the field.
I think that comes from basketball days, like, I would rile people up and, like, make them get all, like, angry, and then they'd foul
Mm,
out, and I'd be like,
yeah,
"See ya.
yeah. Bye.
Bye." You can't really do that in football, but I did learn that if you push someone out of bounds, that they're not eligible for the play, so they can't catch the ball. So this
Oh,
girl kept lining up too close to the sideline, she's, like, their wide receiver, and she would take one step, and I'd push her out of bounds.
great.
It happened twice. I was like, "Girlfriend, you know you're not gonna get the ball now. What's going on?"
Yeah, so what is the, like, solution to that? You just run the other way?
She wasn't supposed to be so wide, like or, like, adjust because I just shoved you out, like, don't do it
Right,
again.
right.
Um, but yeah, I was super scrappy, like, loved how I played. I think I'm at the point with football now that I, like, know all the rules that I can, like, fuck around. You know, like,
Mhm.
before I was like, "Ooh, I'm nervous to make mistakes or fuck up something or false start or whatever," and now I'm like, "I know where I'm supposed to be, I know I'm supposed to do, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna fuck you up."
It was really exciting. I mean, I am not a sports person, but I was like, when I know someone on the field, I'm invested. I'm like,
Yeah.
it was funny because I was like trying to take video the whole time, but like I wasn't paying attention to like where the ball was. I was only focusing on where you were. So who knows what the score was? I was just like,
That's
where's
my kind
Bree?
of filming.
Where's Bree?
Well, that game you saw, we won. So,
Yeah.
that's all you have to know is that we won and we kicked the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to get back to the topic at hand today.
Let's start.
Let's start because I this is a true story. I had a client the other day. She said, "I don't get it. I'm hip thrusting every week. I'm getting sweaty. I'm tired. My movement's good, but my butt never looks any different." And this is kind of a newer client. So we were kind of just like auditing what she had been doing. And I was like, honestly, like your training looks good. Your mindset's in the right spot. And I asked her, and I was like, what are you thinking about when you're training? And she's like, "Well, progressive overload, so I'm trying to add more weight, more weight, more weight." And I was like, "Okay, but are you controlling that weight? Like when you bump up in weight, are you actually feeling the mind muscle connection? Is your brain registering that you're lifting something? Are you thinking about the muscles that you're working?" And she's like, "Honestly, I'm just trying to survive." And I was like, "Bingo, we have the reason why, maybe." And she's like, "I'm doing them, but I'm just kind of surviving."
Yeah.
So
And that's
that's
when it clicked, right? Like, she wasn't training with intention, she was just completing reps, and honestly, most people probably do that without even realizing.
Yes. And reps aren't like Pokemon cards. You don't get points for collecting them. Like the more reps isn't the better, okay? But it's how you do them. It's the quality of the card. You got the Charizard, you got some little dink. I don't even know Pokemon.
Charizard was my favorite.
Okay, so do you have Charizard, which is like an iconic best card, or do you have like the little dinky one that no one actually collects? So we're just gonna say it out loud because how many times have you just like churned and burned through your workout and then you're like, okay, I'm done, and you like, I progressively overloaded, but you just don't see those results.
So why do you think that is that people just rush through their workouts?
Well, I think timing is a huge thing. Like, if people are rushing, you're rushing, you've got somewhere to be. But I think that if people are like, have ample time and they're still rushing through, I think some of it is like a fear response, like "Oh shit, this is hard." And so you're trying to like finish it quick, which is totally valid, right?
Yeah.
But that's not intentional.
Right.
I think another reason why is that when we slow things down, it's more time before we get like that hit of dopamine, like, "Oh, I completed the rep." So I think it like exposes weakness and kind of like exposes your movement or like your weakness if you slow
Yeah.
things down.
And I think, like, fast makes people feel like they're being productive or more efficient.
Yeah.
And I always think of, like, group classes, right, where you go to Orange Theory. I call it circus training, where it tricks your brain to think that you're like working out, and it might work for a little bit, but at some point you really need that intention behind your programming and your individual exercises to actually develop that mind muscle connection, actually like figure out what muscle you're trying to work in the given exercise.
Yeah. And I think that one question that comes up for me is like, or comes up for my clients to me is how can I keep progressively overloading if like the tempo is slowing me down from doing that? And we've talked about this on so many episodes, especially like our main big progressive overload episode. Load is not the only thing that's going to get you the results. In fact, your body doesn't know the difference between 50 pounds and 55 pounds. What
Right.
it does know is how hard that stimulus feels in your body. But if you're not paying attention to that stimulus and like drawing mental energy to that stimulus, you're also leaving like at least 50% of your gains on the table because it's the combination of what your body's doing and how it's responding to that load, but also how your brain is responding to that load. Because, and sorry, I know this is a soapbox episode, because next week when you come back and you're like, I'm going to progressively overload, if you did it really intentionally that first week, slowed things down, held squeezes where you needed to, and then came back, that 50 pounds you used week one is going to feel lighter week two. And not because you're necessarily stronger, but because your nervous system has adapted to what that 50 pounds feels like. Right. And doing it well because you thought about it, you focused on it. So when you feel that again, the next week, your brain's like, "Oh, yeah, we can do this."
Right. It makes me think of like, I don't know, you often see guys in the gym doing, say, bicep curls, right? And they're like heaving and using their entire body. They're like kipping bicep curls. And
Yeah.
you're like, what if you just sat down, supported your back, kept your elbows pinned to your sides, and like really slowly lowered the dumbbell,
Yes.
flexed really hard at the bottom, and then contracted really hard at the top for a few seconds on each. What if you did that and you were able to do less reps, or sorry, less weight with the same amount of reps, but you felt more fatigued by the end of the set? And that's what we really want, is to get your muscles to that near fatigue point in order to drive adaptation.
Right, and relative to the exercise selection of, say, this bicep curl, if you're in a lengthened like, if you're doing an incline bicep curl where you're meant to be in the lengthened position for the bicep, and you're just, like, cheating it and kipping it and doing it quick, it's like, well, now you're not even really doing the exercise.
Right. Now
So
you're just doing like a front delt raise.
right, and then that also opens up the door for injury, and I know a lot of the women that listen to this podcast, us included, have navigated injuries before, and we know how
Mhm.
debilitating that is, more again for your mental than even your physical. So, in this episode, I'm gonna outline the top 6 benefits for tempo training, and these
And why
are
you should
backed
incorporate it.
and why you should incorporate it or at least start thinking about it. Because again, you don't have to be perfect when it comes to training. It's about the intentionality. And so even if you're not holding pauses in the right place or your tempo's a little off or it's too long, that's okay.
And it's just one more thing in your toolkit that you can adjust. Like in the progressive overload episode, we
Yes.
talked about changing sets and reps and having that progressive progression every single week. Tempo is just one more thing. So if you think about a lateral raise, right, you cap out at the 5 pounds or the 8 pounds really quick. How do you make it more challenging? You can start incorporating a tempo, and we'll get
Hmm.
to the explanation of how you define tempo and what that looks like.
Yeah, that's a great point. And those lateral raises, man. When am I like, I'm so glad when I found the gym that I do because I have 12.5s and 17.5s. What
Wow.
a rare gem.
That is a rare gem.
Yeah, so you better believe. I mean, and we're talking because going from like 10 to 15 pounds and something with like a lateral raise with a muscle so small, it's just a bigger jump. So we have to be a little bit more creative with these progressive overload options. So tempo isn't like a decoration, it's part of your stimulus. It's actually how your muscles feel the load. It's not just how heavy the load is. So by thinking about tempo, we're trying to get our brain more involved. So even before we get into all the benefits, I want you to think about tempo being more of a stimulus for your brain than anything, more of a chance for you to think about what's my body doing, what positions feel good, what positions are less injury or are injury adverse, all that. So, first one improves control and technique. Tempo forces you to slow down and own each phase of the lift. And what we mean by owning a position, when I'm going into the bottom of my back squat, when I'm owning a position, I know my hips are in the right spot. I know my lower core is engaged. I know my upper back's tight with that bar. Like it's the knowing. And so I think that part, owning each phase of the lift, when we slow things down, it gives you just a little bit more time to reinforce better movement patterns. Because you
Right.
can feel when something's off, right?
Right. And it goes in line with like what we've always said of there's no real wrong way to do a lift, but when we're focusing on like what the goal is of that exercise, like in your squat example, we want to hit depth because that's where the glutes, turn on and get developed. So you want to try to get low, and if you're just come walking your squat out and bing bang boom, like you're partial repping, sure, you could do a lot of weight, but is that really going to develop your body in the way that you want? No.
Yeah, especially like if your goals are glutes. Number 2.
Another benefit to tempo training is it increases your time under tension. So, more muscular stimulus without increasing the load, which can boost hypertrophy or muscle growth. So, in the example of a lateral raise, right? If you can do 8 to 10 to 15 reps with the 5 pounds, you've kind of checked all your bases there. How do you continue to apply more stimulus? Well, you can use the 8 pounds and go slower. Maybe you pause at the top where your arms are out to the side and you lower down really slow. That will make that same weight that you've already kind of mastered just as challenging.
Actually, can I hit you with one of my favorite lateral raise, like, progressions from exactly what you just said, which is
Sure.
crazy? Um, Rachel and I used to do this, lateral raise burnout because
Yeah.
I was always stuck between weights, and I was like, "I can't just keep hitting these 10s," like, I had hit, like, the mental wall,
Yep.
and she's like, "Okay, fine. Grab 5s, not 15s, not 12s, stop trying to bump up the weight. Grab 5s, and we're gonna add a tempo." So we did
Yep.
5 reps, then a 5-second hold, 4 reps, and then a 4-second hold, and so the
Yep.
amount of
I
time
love
I was
doing that.
lifting, yes, these 5s, it was the same amount of time under tension, but my brain had a different stimulus because it had, like, a job to do. You
Yep.
know what I mean? It's like
Yep.
you got
And time under tension influences that fatigue point that we want to get your when we say like lift heavy, do hard sets, like we don't mean just go lift heavy for the sake of lifting heavy. We want to have this intention behind it. So we want you to get each set or your sequence of sets to the point where you're fatiguing towards the end and you're like, "Ooh, I couldn't possibly do another set because I'm wiped."
right, right, and even for people who are in seasons where life's pretty tough and, like, your nervous system doesn't feel, like, ready to take on big strain, I've used tempo a lot to give myself the feeling of that stimulus of, like, "Okay, I did something hard, but I knew that I wasn't crushing myself because I was doing it in a safe way."
Yep.
However, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. I'm learning this, and we're gonna talk about it here. So if your rep is stretching longer than, like, 10 seconds, you might also be trading off, like, effectiveness and effective force generation for those longer, like, sets. Okay, and number 3, our 3rd benefit of tempo training is also one of my favorite unsung ones that most people don't know about, which is training with tempo can actually increase your mobility and build your positional strength. So, if you think about that back squat example, right? If you're doing your back squats, you're doing 5 by 5 and they're hard and they're power lifty and they're heavy. And then the next week I'm like, "All right, I want you to slow down your eccentric by 2 seconds." In the bottom, right? You're
Mhm.
gonna feel that stretch in your ankles, in your knees, in your hips. You're gonna feel your core have to work extra hard to pause you in that position. Then when you come out of it, coming out of that dead stop, we've done those dead stop tricep extensions before and they
Oh,
absolutely
yeah, my
crush
favorite.
because you have to produce way more power when you're going from a dead stop than when you're, like, bouncing out of the bottom, right?
Yep.
This also gives you a chance to own that position. So, if you're someone who struggles with hip mobility or ankle mobility, actually lifting can make your mobility better because you're loaded in your most compressed position, but you're giving yourself time to do it well.
Yep. And one of the most common misconceptions is that people will say, "Oh, I need to stretch because I'm not flexible."
Right.
Well, actually, what you need to do is lift weights in appropriate ranges of motion because all lifting is loaded stretching. And in order to have a new range of motion, we need to load that range of motion. Otherwise, when you're stretching, you're just temporarily elongating the muscle and it's going to go right back, right? Like there's nothing there encouraging it to change, right? We need the strength adaptation component in order to see a new mobility.
Yes. You just nailed it. There was this, Charles Poliquin. Do you know who Charles Poliquin is?
Oh, yes,
Like,
I'm aware.
the godfather of yeah. "A muscle is not trained through its full range of motion, it's only strong in the range in which it is trained."
Mhm.
So you can actually gain range of motion by training better range so that guy who's, like, kipping his bicep curls, like, sure, like, he's getting a pump. His brain is working hard, but
Right,
he may not be able to repeat that same level of effort in the weeks to come because, 1, there's not enough intention behind it, but
right,
also 2, like, I don't know, it just feels like a sure sure way to get bicep tendinitis by just doing more reps.
right, right.
Okay.
Which is a perfect segue into reducing injury risk. So, this is benefit number 4. Tempo training can reduce your injury risk because slower movement reduces momentum, making it
Yep.
easier to maintain proper alignment. Momentum masks weakness. So, tempo exposes it and lets you correct it before it becomes in pain.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example where okay, a single leg RDL. If I'm trying to do 10 reps of single leg RDL as fast as I can, your balance is gonna be messed up.
Right,
You're gonna be so focused on what's happening in your body, like trying to keep your balance, that you're not actually gonna be thinking about the stretch and the contraction of your muscles. And I think that in those situations, dynamic training definitely has a place in hypertrophy and in body recomposition. In fact, studies show that having a balance of both is very helpful. However, intentionality is what matters here. So if you're, doing these RDLs really fast, like you can feel that your body is not in the right position. And then with that, we'll go into number 5, which is this also using tempo also has the ability to boost your strength endurance. So tempo training can train your ability to produce force over longer durations of time. So think about if you're a marathon runner and you're like, should I be doing 1 rep max back squat to train for marathons? And you're like, well, there could
probably
be a
not.
place. There could be a place for that, but probably not, right? It's way too taxing on the nervous system when your main priority is marathon training. And also, 1 rep isn't really training you for your sport. Again, there's
Right,
benefits, right? We don't want to like overtrain endurance all the time, which is what I did in college with throwing. But I think that using resistance training for people who are doing more endurance based endeavors or like, high rocks athletes, people who are climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, like doing this is tempo training is for you. It is designed for you to keep your tissues and your joints happy and healthy and gliding properly.
right.
Um,
As
you don't
someone who has competed in powerlifting for, I think it was like 6 or 7 years, my body was beat the hell up. So what was I gonna do after? I was constantly doing 1 rep maxes, 3 rep maxes all the time. I was going to do lighter weights with more tempo, slowing
Yes.
things down, building my base up again so that I didn't like constantly wreck my body.
And that is such a great example because in my experience with CrossFit, so much of what I was doing was dynamic. And in fact, my primary goal was to turn my brain all the way off because it hurt.
Right.
So when I was in off seasons for my CrossFit competitions, I was doing bodybuilding, 8 to
Mhm.
12 reps with a tempo,
Yep.
3 to 4 sets, like straight up bodybuilding. I found it so boring and I felt like I wasn't getting anything out of it. And I was like, this isn't working because of like what we said in the beginning. I wasn't like that sweaty at the end. I felt like mentally worked, but I didn't feel as physically worked as I was like used to.
Right.
So you don't always have to slow things down. We think that a hybrid approach, especially if you are training for something, doing the or the non-complementary style of training is beneficial, and it often gives you muscle stimulus and performance from like an endurance perspective. Like you're able to do more reps of something when you add tempo.
Yeah. And we'll move to our last one, which is number 6, which we've said this before, it enhances the mind muscle connection. So it gives you more awareness to which muscles you should actually be working in the given exercise. So, this one is a big one for newbie lifters. If you've never worked out before and you're starting your new program, don't just like get on the cable machine and like muscle your way through it. Like really take it slow and try to figure out like, okay, where should I feel this? Go slow between the eccentric and the concentric, which we'll explain here in the next little segment. But
Yeah.
really try to figure out like, okay, I'm doing a tricep extension. It's in the name. Let me try to figure out which muscle is the tricep.
Honestly, that is the number again, the soapbox is coming out. The tricep extension, if you are not locking out your elbow, what the fuck are you doing? I'm
Yes.
so annoyed.
If you're not pinning your elbows to your side, what are you
Yes.
doing?
And I really do feel that way. Like, the external stability component of bodybuilding, I think, is so often overlooked. Like you were saying, pinning your elbow to your side and, like, truly isolating the bicep as the hand comes up. Or if you're doing a rope tricep extension, pin your elbows to the side so your arms can't move, and you lock out that elbow as hard as you freaking can.
Yeah.
Like, same thing with knee extensions, right? You've
Yep.
been crushing your knee extensions, loading them, loading them, loading them for kind of a while now.
Yep.
I don't know, are you still doing them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
And
love
if
my
you
leg extensions.
and you just if you just kick it out and go back down, next time you train, whoever's listening to this, please lock out your triceps or lock out your knees on a knee extension, and for the entire of set, you will feel so much different.
Yeah. There's a time and place, right? Like, you can spend a lot of time with tempo, and then if you move into the next phase of your training and you're like, "I'm just gonna say send it." Don't do that every week, right? Like, you don't wanna do that for, like, 4 or 5 weeks in a row, but you can
Yeah,
do that as part of, like, your programming.
and that's why
Um
periodization matters.
Exactly. So let's give the people what they want and what they came here for. Let's decode what it means when we say tempo. How does that show up on your program? So you might be looking at your program, right? And it says goblet squat, 4 sets, 12 reps. Bree, explain us what tempo is, what that looks like.
Okay, so typically I put the tempo first in
Okay.
my prescriptions. So it'll be like back squat, and then the prescription will be like 30x0, 8 to 12 reps, rest 90 seconds, 3 sets. I put it first because I want my clients to see it. I don't want you to be
Smart.
like, oh, I didn't see it. Yes, you saw it because you did the number of reps. First and foremost, that's why. Second thing, tempo is made up of 4 numbers. So the 30x0, um, the first number is the way down. It's not always the way down, but it's the eccentric. So it's the lengthening of the muscles. The second number is the pause at the stretch, or sometimes the pause at the bottom. Let me actually rewind and let's go through a movement example. Let's use the back squats. So your tempo is 30x0. First number, the way down, or the eccentric. For the back squat, it's the way down. So you lower your body down with the bar, 3, 2, 1. The second number is the pause and the stretch. And the reason why back squat, it's the stretch, is because your quads are stretched, your glutes are stretched, hamstrings are in the stretched position. In this tempo prescription, 30x0, there's no pause. So as soon as you hit the bottom, you stand back up. The third number is the time on the way up. So it's the concentric. And again, it's not always the way up, but it's the where um, the explosive intent is. And when I put an X in my training prescriptions, I want the intention to be explosive. When we're
Mhm.
progressively overloading and lifting heavy, it's not always going to look explosive. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the intent you're putting into it. Am I trying to stand up so fast that I'm jumping?
You're like Serena Williams grunting.
Oh, for sure. Great call out. Number
Yeah.
4, the fourth number is the pause at the top. So sometimes I'll add a pause in like 30x1 at the top of a back squat because I want my client to spend that 1 second rebracing their core, taking a big sip of air, and relocking down their elbows, or even just giving their brain like a moment, like a quick pause to reset for the next rep. We were talking about mobility a lot. We're talking about mobility as one of our benefits to training. In this back squat example, with a 3, 2x1 tempo, 3 seconds down, 2 second hold in the bottom, you better believe that your core, hips, and ankles are screaming. And then if I give you an X after that, now you have to explode out of that pause. That's so much more stimulus than you'd be getting if you were just like repping them out, bouncing up and down, you know?
Yep. So the squat is a great example of explaining that 30x0. So the reason we don't say like up down for all of these things is because it can get a little confusing, right? So another example is we've talked about the tricep extension a lot in this episode. So if you're doing a tricep extension, your first number of 4 will be when your hands are already at the bottom by your thighs, right? So the 4, you're bringing your hands back up to your collarbone for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that second number is a pause where your tricep is stretched, right?
Yes.
And then the third number is, again, like you said, time on the way up, but here it's actually going to be where your hands come down to your sides in the tricep extension. And then the
Yeah.
second number, so we're working with a 4-1-1-2 here, so 4 on the way up with your hands, 1 pause, 1 push on the way down, and then a 2-second squeeze of the triceps at the very bottom.
Yes.
And then you
And
repeat
so
that 4, 3, 2, 1 to do it all over again.
yes, and I love that you gave an example of a longer pause at the bottom because I it is more common for me to prescribe a 2 at the end of my tempo prescription for a dumbbell row, a pull-up, tricep extension, anything that I really want you to squeeze as much as you can out of that rep or out of that set. And again, this is the thing that so many people get wrong is if I'm doing my tricep extensions and I'm not locking out my elbow with as much intent as I can, you're leaving so much on the table.
Right.
Same thing if your prescription is an X in the concentric, if you're not actually trying to use that explosive intent, even if it looks slow because it's heavy, you're leaving a lot on the table because now we know from this episode, it's not just a loading game, it's a mental game too. And in fact, your mind is the thing that's kind of running the show on how you adapt as well. So, Kelsey, I know you use tempo in your training, but I want to hear a little bit about your experience with tempo training and how you utilize this yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always prescribe a tempo, but if I have a client who is going back to the squat example, right? Can't really hit depth. I will prescribe a 2-second pause in the bottom of the squat to try to encourage, like we said before, improving that mobility at the bottom of the squat. So that could look something like, 2, 2, X, 1, right? Where I don't really care about taking the eccentric slow, but what I really want is that 2-second pause at the bottom, stand up with intention, and then
Mm,
repeat quickly.
yeah. Similarly, I use tempo in my training, like we were saying with the lateral raise example, with pull-ups specifically, like,
Mhm.
when I've done my, 5 to 10 reps, however many it is, on that last rep when I'm like, "Ooh, I probably can't do another one," I will hold myself up there with, like, the best form for, like, an extra couple seconds.
Yeah.
Sometimes as long as I can, because even though I can't do another rep, I can still put forth effort that puts me in that target RPE 9 zone.
Yep.
And then again, it's about confidence. So the more your nervous system's like, "Oh, you could hold up there for 5 seconds? Nice." Then the next week you come back and it's gonna be a little bit easier or less daunting even.
Yep. And strength is often more built in the eccentric phase of the movement. So if we think about like a chin up, right? If we're trying to improve how to do a chin up or a pull up, you might spend more time in the eccentric or when you're lowering your body to the floor instead of like just trying to rep out like really partial reps. Like, no, we want to slow down and get that full range of motion and take your time, and that might mean you have to use a band or some additional assistance in order to complete the reps because you're really taking that lower the eccentric slower.
Yeah. I think it also speaks to different so one last part about, like, how tempo can fit into periodization too, is that if you're someone who's wired and tired and stressed and progressive overload from, like, the loading sense just, like, doesn't feel good, and if you've been in that season, you know exactly that feeling I'm talking about where your nervous system just feels, like, totally tapped. I really encourage you to use tempo, and not necessarily so that you can keep progressively overloading, but to not lose sight of the quality of your movement even when you feel like shit.
Yeah. Yep.
You can have a great lift mentally and physically by taking some of the ego out of it and being like, I'm just going to move the best that I can for as long as I can, and then I'm going to leave. And I promise you're going to get way better results, better body composition results, better relationship to like food and cravings and all those things if you take that approach versus just rushing through your workout to get it over with.
Yep. And similarly, I also have been using a lot of tempo to recover from my shoulder injury because
Yes.
obviously I can't do all the like heavy weights that I've done previously. But what I am doing is like a single arm landmine row where I have like a super slow lowering. And then I'm really spending time in that upper position. So the last number, right? Where I'm like fully extended at the
And
top
pressing up hard.
and I'm squeezing my traps. I'm really trying to get my mobility back. So this is another way that tempo has been instrumental in my plan right now.
Yeah. I think about like some of the crazy tempo prescriptions I've done over the years, like for mobility specifically, like overhead squat 5-5-5-1.
What the fuck is that?
Isn't that crazy? That is, I can literally picture it in my head in True Coach because that was one of our functional bodybuilding like
Five,
things. It was at
five,
each
five,
week.
one.
It was five
So
five
you're
five one, four four four
lowering for
one,
5, pause for 5, up
standing
for
up
5?
for 5. Yes. If
Oh
you
my
haven't trained with
god.
the tempo and the concentric, that is like, especially like tempo pull-ups with
That's
a
just
band.
mean. That's mean.
If and honestly, this is for the people listening to this, if pull-ups is a goal of yours, I really feel like I made the most progress with my pull-ups when I actually put a tempo on my concentric.
Mm,
Instead of focusing on, like, trying to get my chin over the bar so quick, I was like, "Nope, I'm gonna take my sweet time and engage all the right muscles and focus on gripping my hands and focus on what my core is doing."
yeah,
That really has been the catalyst for my pull-ups, at least in the last, like, year or 2.
yeah.
So, what we want you to know from this episode is that tempo training is a skill. Control is a skill. It's not just a cue. So, we want you to really listen to it and treat it like a skill.
And slowing down the eccentric is the cheat code for muscle growth or strength.
Yeah. And if you've never paused or controlled your reps with a tempo or thought about tempo, you could be leaving gains on the table, and we just won't have that.
We must not have
We
that.
must not have that. You cannot leave the gains on the table.
So next time you train, pick one lift and try a controlled 3 to 4 second eccentric and tell us you didn't feel your muscles in a way that you've never felt before.
And so this week, instead of adding more weight, add more control and tag us if you try it. We'd love to see what movement you tried it out on and just how it felt and any feedback. Especially if you're navigating injuries or trying to gain a new skill. Let us know what muscles started screaming first. And as always, follow us on Instagram at overt_thinking podcast, at Brianna Lamb, and at Kelsey Michelle.
And we're now on YouTube, so please give us a follow and let's keep this conversation going. And we will see you in the
In the
next
next
episode.
episode.